MC Laubscher here, the host of the Cashflow Ninja podcast and also the president and chief wealth and investment strategist of Producers Wealth, where we help our clients integrate cashflow banking, also known as infinite banking, with their business and investments. If you're interested in learning more about how we create strategies that integrate cashflow banking and investments to turbocharge them, you can access a video series at yourownbankingsystem.com. That's yourownbankingsystem.com.
Welcome to the Cashflow Ninja, the podcast sharing how to create income streams and manage, multiply, and protect your wealth in the new economy. Here is your host inside the dojo, MC Laubscher.
Hello, Cashflow Ninjas. MC Laubscher here, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Ninja. I have a great show for you today, and in today's show, we're going to look at opportunities in the eye of the economic hurricane. I'm joined in today's episode by returning guest Doug Casey. Doug is a world-renowned speculator and libertarian philosopher that wrote the definitive book on profiting from periods of economic turmoil, Crisis Investing, a #1 New York Times bestseller. His books, Totally Incorrect and Right on the Money, continue his mission of challenging statism and advocating liberty and free markets. And his new project with John Hunt, the Highground Series Books, that includes Speculator and Druglord, challenges thinking around morality, philosophy, and much, much more. Adventure, intrigue, philosophy, politics. You'll find all of the latest in this fast-paced novel from Doug Casey and John Hunt. Bill Bonner shared his thoughts on Doug's latest project. Adventure, intrigue, philosophy, politics. You'll find it all in this fast-paced novel from Doug Casey and John Hunt. Most importantly, you'll find thoughts, the kind of thoughts that will make you think too. Doug has been a guest on hundreds of radio and TV shows, including David Letterman and Charlie Rose, and has been featured in publications such as Time, Forbes magazine, People, and the Washington Post. Founder of Casey Research, he is a regular keynote speaker at Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of libertarians and like-minded thinkers. He currently spends most of his time in Argentina and Uruguay, as well as traveling to various dysfunctional hellholes. MC Laubscher here, the creator and host of the Cashflow Ninja and president of Producers Wealth, and I'm on a mission to help you achieve economic and financial freedom as quickly as possible. I achieve this by integrating the infinite banking concept with real estate investments to increase your efficiency and returns and recapture cash flow that you're not even aware of that you're losing. I share the #1 strategy for investors in my holistic wealth creation course at yourownbankingsystem.com. That's yourownbankingsystem.com. Doug, welcome back to the show.
It's a pleasure, MC. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic to have you on. Thoroughly enjoy our conversations. And we have a conversation about once every 6 months. And isn't it amazing how quickly the world is changing every 6 months and even in less than that?
Well, right now in the U.S., it's all Kavanaugh all the time. I don't know what's going to happen. And frankly, I don't really care. I think that Christine Ford is either deluded or a liar. I'm quite amazed that nobody talks about her. I mean, she's being treated as a saint for being a woman who's alleging some type of violation. So I've really got little sympathy for her because I think it's got to be a fabrication, as something that she brought up that maybe happened 35 years ago. And there are so many problems with her story. But at the same time, although I'm sympathetic to Kavanaugh, he seems like a decent guy. Frankly, I would not have him as a Supreme Court judge, not because of anything that's being alleged against him now, but simply because he's not much of a libertarian. Frankly, he's a deep state guy.
Wasn't he involved too, Doug, in constructing the Patriot Act?
What is that act in particular?
Oh, it's just after 9/11, the Patriot Act.
The Patriot Act. Yes, yes, he was. He was instrumental in the Patriot Act. He's shown no sympathy for American citizens, which were placed under rendition and sent off to terrible places to be tortured. He was completely quiet about what happened to Abu Ghraib and such. So that, no, I'm very, very suspicious of his motives and such.
Absolutely. As listeners could probably tell, we don't have a dog in this fight. It purely is a massive spectacle. And where it kind of plays into wealth creation and overall wealth preservation in these turbulent times that we live in is, Doug, this has really impacted society, not just in the United States. As far as splitting it apart, it seems that the media is absolutely hell-bent on dividing every single little niche that they can, right? Turning everyone in society against each other. And as I mentioned, it doesn't seem that it's just happening in the United States, but it's quite globally in Europe and in South Africa. And we've seen what our friend Stefan has gone through in Australia and in New Zealand. It's quite remarkable.
Oh no, it's disgusting on the one hand, but disturbing as well. I mean, it seems like the U.S. is on the ragged edge of a civil war. Quite frankly, the people on the left and the right can't even talk to each other at this point. So I don't see how it's going to end well. And the reason that the markets are in a bubble at the moment, to me, it seems strictly the result of the policies of the Federal Reserve, which has been pumping up the money supply for the last 10 years.
Absolutely. You touched on the markets, and I mean, looking at this, and I love how you write and approach things too, looking at the societal fabric, how this all puts together, because we humans are are interesting creatures nonetheless, and we do make up the market. Now that you've touched on the markets, what's your view with the global economy, markets? You've said about we've spoken about the bubble, but it sure looks like it's very frothy. How much more air can we put into this?
Well, I don't know, because as far as, this whole crisis started back in 2007. And when it really came unglued in 2008 and 2009, not just the U.S. government, but the Europeans, the Chinese, the Japanese, and all these little minor countries all created trillions and trillions of new currency units. And that is what's inflated all of the financial markets, the bond markets in a hyper bubble, the stock market, real estate, especially in big cities. So I think it's all going to come unglued, quite frankly. It's going to be very, very ugly. And all those dollars and euros and other things which were created are still in existence. They're just in the financial markets at the moment. But when they flow down to the consumer level, retail prices of things that people buy are going to go way up. I don't know. This is a very bad situation. And of course, in the meanwhile, the rich have been getting richer because they get this money that's been created first. They stand next to the fire hose of money coming out of the Federal Reserve in New York and Washington and other big cities. And the people in flyover country just get what little trickles down. So You've got social problems that are facing us, not just economic problems.
Yeah, that's a great point, because the folks that are standing the closest to the trough, and as you mentioned, drinking out of this fire hose, they can position themselves in hard assets, whether it's commodities, whether it's income-producing real estate, all of these things that help them and position them to actually benefit from all of this inflation, where Joe Sixpack and Cheryl Chardonnay, that's on the street, that actually gets a little bit of whatever is left lost comes to them. They really see it through price inflation, when they go to the grocery shop and just purchase clothing, paying their rents, and so forth. So all of the basic needs just for survival, and it's just making this gap, as you eloquently stated, it bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, and you mentioned commodities, and actually, the only thing that's cheap out there now is commodities and related things, like soybeans, for instance, are at, sugar is at a 10 or 12-year low. Coffee is at a 10-year low. Soybeans are close to a 10-year low. So, quite frankly, that's the place to be right now, is commodities.
It's one of those assets classes right now that's not getting a lot of attention and not a lot of interest, which means it's probably the right place to be at.
It is, and related to commodities, I know that most people aren't involved in the commodities market, which is to say futures, because they're really dynamite. The volatility, because of the margin, is very, very high. It's interesting to know they're as cheap as they are, but quite frankly, at this moment, I think that mining stocks are what people should be in. That's the only part of the stock market that's cheap, is mining stocks, and in particular, as I draw attention to precious metal stocks, because we're looking at a monetary crisis, but also so-called energy metals that are going to be used for battery technology. Because I think I'm of the opinion, I've been a car guy my whole life, you know. I've always had high-performance cars, always, for many, many years. But to me, the handwriting's on the wall, and electric cars are the way to fly for many, many reasons. And battery metals are actually quite interesting as a speculation now, too. So just some observations.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And speaking about commodities, and I know coltan is big out of Africa, and other emerging economies rely very, very heavily on producing a lot of these commodities. The interest rate increases and so forth, and the current economic environment has had quite an impact on these emerging economies. We've seen countries like my country of birth, South Africa, right? The South African rand losing a lot of value compared to the US dollar and other currencies as well. What are you seeing in those markets, and what are you seeing in those emerging markets?
Well, you know, every currency in the world is basically just a floating abstraction. They're created out of thin air, backed by absolutely nothing today by all the governments of the world. And even the US dollar is just the healthiest horse on the way to the glue factory. So this is why I'm very big on gold and silver in particularly, because they actually are historical monies. So everybody listening to us should have some gold and some silver in their portfolio. I mean, it's as simple as that. And then if you want to get beyond that and speculate, well, then you look at this point, the various mining stocks. And of course, people have been doing other things, cryptocurrencies. I've been involved in cryptocurrencies, and they've been very interesting. And I think they might be interesting again now. 90% of them are crap, but some of them that are coming out now, new technologies, could show people 100 to 1 shots again. And of course, the hottest thing that everybody's interested in right now is pot stocks. I don't know if you've gotten involved in them or not.
They're very interesting, and I've seen some very interesting investment opportunities in them with real estate plays. I've seen some really, really supportive business opportunities. I mean, there's a lot of folks moving into that space because there's so much opportunity. Like I just said, with the supportive industries, just think of the work would be there for potential lawyers, right?
Yes, that's right. Although I've also been involved in the pot stocks, and although I think marijuana is going to get very big, not just the THC aspects of marijuana to get high, but the therapeutic end of it. The
CBD oils and so forth.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's got legs. But the problem is that there are hundreds of these startup marijuana companies out there now today. And once again, 90% of them are total crap. They're just promotions. So I think a lot of people are going to wind up getting hurt in them. I would be taking money off the table right now, quite frankly.
It's getting a little bit hot as well. Now, Doug, you're speaking to us from Buenos Aires in Argentina, and you have your little not little fantastic development, but little getaway, as I'd like to say, at La Estancia de Cafayete in the Salta province in there. What are some of the things that you're seeing on the ground happening there? Because there's been quite a bit of inflation in there for the regular guy and gal on the street.
Oh, there's no question about that. No question about that. One thing about Argentina is it's very cheap right now. The currency has collapsed here, which has devastated the average guy in the street, because if he produces more than he consumes and tries to save the difference to get ahead, he basically has been putting his money into the government's currency, the Argentine peso. So it's lost 50% of its value in the last few months. And that means the average guy has lost 50% of his savings. So it's a very, very bad thing, and a very, very a dangerous, risky thing, because when people lose everything they have, they tend to lose their minds as well, and get violent, riot. So everything's calm here in Argentina. It's delightful. It's a fantastic place to be and enjoy yourself. Not a particularly good place to invest. You can't invest here. You can only speculate here. But you've got to be someplace. I enjoy Argentina, notwithstanding all the problems, which are created by the government. And still, just like in every other country in the world, these people support these horrible people that run for office and become politicians. I mean, it's supporting the people that are cutting their throats. It's all quite amazing and quite stupid.
It is quite amazing that the folks causing all the issues are the first ones standing up, saying how we're going to solve this, and then that they still actually believe them. A great place to live, great culture, great people, great food, fantastic music, and then of course there's the tango, right, Doug? So there's something to be said for that. This kind of ties into your international man approach, where there's assets outside of the places where you live, and there's businesses generating income in different other currencies for you around the world, globally. The multiple flags kind of theory.
Yeah, and I've got to tell you, MC, since I spoke to you the last time, I've started a blog. It actually existed before. It's a long story, but I run it now, and it's a blog called internationalman.com. I don't even know if you're on the list. Are you?
No, I'm absolutely on that list. Oh, yes.
So we're trying to improve it and reform it with lots of international stuff. And I know that most Americans are not terribly interested in things outside the U.S., which is a tragic error, a big mistake. You've got to be aware of what's going on other places in the world and opportunities that might present themselves other places in the world. But I'd urge anyone listening to us today to go to internationalman.com. It's free to sign up and read it, a daily blog. Got to put a commercial in there. I hope you don't mind.
No, absolutely not. And I would absolutely highly recommend that. And your book, The International Man, which I have a copy of, one of the original copies, was a fantastic read too. And, it just amazed me, especially when you spoke about South Africa and growing up there and being from there. Sometimes when you read something about the country that you live in, and someone else writes about it, you're like, well, this person's never left his office in New York City, right? He read it somewhere online, but when you wrote about it, I couldn't. It was quite amazing how you the information that you shared and the things that you saw, because that was truly boots on the ground information. So with all your travels and all the places that you would go to I would highly recommend the International Man and getting on Doug's list, because the stuff that he writes about these places that he visits, really, I can vouch just from that experience from reading what Doug had to say and write about South Africa was right on the money. So definitely check it out. Doug, how's the books come along? The ones that Druglord, the Highground series. I believe that was novels, one of the ones that out in the Speculator.
A series of 6 or 7 novels that start out with our hero, Charles Knight, who starts out at age 22 going to Africa and getting involved in a bush war and then becoming a drug lord. And the next book in the series is Assassin. And I think it's going to be a fantastic book because it traces the history of political assassinations and revisionist history. Who was good and who was bad among the people that got killed, and what are the techniques and what's the morality of political assassination? So we're working on that now, and it'll be out by August, but I hope people don't fall behind, and I hope they go on Amazon and pick up a copy of Druglord and Speculator, the first 2 books in the series.
You're listening to Doug Casey on the Cashflow Ninja podcast. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Life settlement investments have allowed financial and banking institutions to not only buy their equity contractually, but also diversify their capital from any economic, market, and geopolitical risk. It's been part of the billion-dollar blueprint followed by institutional investors. And if you're an accredited investor, you can also now participate in this vehicle with enormous growth potential. You can watch an informational webinar presented by one of the premier organizations providing life settlement investments, Penumbra Solutions, at cashflowninja.com/life settlements. You're listening to Doug Casey on the Cashflow Ninja podcast, and now back to our interview. Doug, you've been involved in quite a number of projects. You've had quite a journey, traveling, living in many, many countries, and investing in different parts of the world. And also, one of my favorite stories that you've shared with our listeners before is talking to politicians in very corrupt places to try and persuade them to actually give the free market a chance. What are some of the things that you look at these days that are of interest of you, or to you, and that you're reading about a little bit? What are some of the things that grabs your attention?
Well, the next meaningful trip I'm going to take should be to Iraq in November. Nobody goes to Iraq as a tourist. Let's admit it. It's a war zone. It's a crazy place, insane place. where you don't want to be identified as a Westerner, quite frankly. But perhaps idiotically, I'm going to go there in November, assuming that I can get my visa approved by then. Going to some of these crazy countries, just getting the visa from the government is like pulling teeth. But that's currently on my plans. And, but frankly, MC, is as much as I urge that people internationalize themselves and travel and so forth, I've done so much of it. I've been to 150 some countries. I've lived in 10. I've come to hate airports and airplanes. And it used to be a wonderful adventure.
Right.
But I've kind of been there and done that. But having said that, I still urge people, everybody that hasn't done it, to expand their horizons and travel as much as they can. And if you're young, you should travel with a backpack, quite frankly, hitchhiking and stuff like that. In fact, let me go further. I don't know if we talked about this the last time, but when I talk to anybody that's a high school guy, and they're thinking about going to college, I say, what's the matter with you? You're misallocating a huge amount of money and 4 years of time. You could do a lot with the money you'd spend for college and a lot more with the time. And forget about the education. The education is something that you get yourself by reading books, by experiencing the world. And frankly, you can go on to most, like MIT, all of their courses are on the internet, or when you're driving in your car, you should be listening to the teaching company's courses, which are absolutely brilliant on every subject under the sun. So just a word about that type of thing, going to college. There must be some people listening that are thinking about it. Big mistake.
Yeah, especially if you're going into the arts and you're doing philosophy, and I mean, you want to study one of our favorite topics, Roman history and so forth. That's self-study and reading. And as you mentioned, all of these major colleges and universities have all of this online for free. So that's not, that's not a very good allocation of resources and time. And then just the financial impact that it has. That's another thing that I just see. It's seriously harmed society as a whole to see all of these very, very young and talented guys and gals coming out of universities and colleges with really no skills that the market is requiring or desiring, and a ton of student debt.
Oh, it's even worse than that because, when you're 18, typical age to go to college, you hold your professors, their authority figures, you hold them in respect and all that. But universally in colleges in North America and Europe, the faculty has been totally taken over by neo-Marxists and socialists, collectivists, statists. All of these professors are just despicable in their views of the world, and they can't help but influence all the students who, or have more or less blank slates about these things. So you're paying money when you go to college to be corrupted and have your mind filled with all kinds of things that you're going to have to get rid of in the future. So it's not even a neutral experience. It's a negative experience, not counting the cost and the time.
Yeah, now of course, Jordan Peterson has made quite an impact, and there's been quite a pushback with a lot of the stuff that's taught. And to your point, that's one of the things that I've seen as well is just this victim mentality that is just been taught and just accepted, and this whole basic principle of the difference between equal opportunity and opportunity of outcome. They seem to have completely basically spun that a little bit to turn everybody into victims.
It's heroic on the part of Jordan Peterson to have stuck his neck out and say the things that he said. As a university professor, he is, when it comes to university professors, the guy's about 1 out of 100. I mean, all of his colleagues are completely against him. My only objection with Jordan Peterson, as good as he is he doesn't go far enough, quite frankly.
Right. No, he definitely has. So investment implications. We have a world right now where there's a lot of divide, societal divide, whether it be North America, Africa, Europe, Australasia, Asia, and so forth. We've got markets that's very frothy. We've identified some opportunities in the commodities markets. We've spoken a little bit about crypto and cannabis opportunities and so forth, and the importance of internationalization. What are some of the investment implications? How do you see the next 6 months, Doug? And where do you see some opportunities?
I hope that the current bull market, which is very long in the tooth and way, way overdue, not just for a correction, but a crash, I hope it continues for the next 6 months. I really do, because I prefer good times, even if they're artificial, to bad times, which I think will be very real. But I'm not planning my life around a continuation of this bull market. I think, if nothing else, unless a person is very financially sophisticated, at this point, the key is try to produce more than you consume and save the difference. Save the dollars and use some of those dollars to buy precious metals, gold and silver. I mean, that's a basic, something that everybody can do and should do. So that's kind of first. Other than that, opportunities, speculative opportunities, besides the mining stocks and commodities, there's nothing I want to touch right now. We're on the edge of a cataclysm, as far as I'm concerned. So it's time to get rid of debt, be conservative, pull your horns in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, looking at where we are, just the news today, I mean, a lot of good news out there, right? And it's when people start believing that this is not going to go anywhere with up, that you have to absolutely proceed with caution. Globally, geographically, what are some of the areas that you see a lot of opportunities in, and what markets do you see some opportunities in?
Well, it depends, of course, on exactly who you are, how old you are, how much capital you have, as to what you might want to do. Younger people that want to be entrepreneurial. I think South Africa, your homeland, is on the slippery slope going downhill rapidly. Not much there, but I think that a younger person that is looking to make a fortune should look to Africa, where it's not a level playing field. I don't like level playing fields. I like to be on the high ground, where I've got more knowledge, more money, more experience, more connections than anybody else in the room. And you go to Africa, every room you're going to be in, practically, you're going to be that guy. So that's one thing I would look at. Anybody can do that, and most people don't even think of it. What else? What else to do? What else to do in the U.S. today? I don't know. See, look, the problem for an American, and most of our listeners, I think, are Americans, is that there's 300 million other people in the country that more or less have the same background and experience and connections, et cetera, education, whatever, that you do. So it's you got a lot of competition. I like to go places where there's little competition, not a lot of competition. So that's kind of my general answer.
Absolutely. Now for a fun question, Doug. Have you had the opportunity to see Matthew McConaughey's movie called Gold? That was, I guess, based on the Brick scandal. I wanted to see if you've seen that, or any thoughts or comments on that.
No, I wanted to see. It wasn't a big box office hit. I'm not sure why it wasn't a box office hit. Maybe it's because the average American doesn't know or care anything about gold, but I would have loved to have seen that movie. I've got to watch it on Netflix. Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, I figured I was going to ask you. I think I saw this the last time we had a conversation, and I said, well, you most likely must have known some of the characters that was involved. Maybe played some smaller role in the movie as far as the characters that the story's based on.
Well, actually, during the great bull market in gold stocks that ran from, let me see if I can get my times right, 1993 to 1997. It's going to seem like that's 20 years ago. It's going to seem like ancient history to a lot of people. But in that bull market, there were 3 companies I got involved in that were huge hits for me. And Bre-X was one of them. That stock started trading at $1. And by the time it blew up, it was trading at about $140. So, and I was buying it at $1 because the story was great. And there was no way of knowing that it was a fraud at that time. I bought it low. I sold it high. It was one of the biggest hits I ever made in my life. And it was a complete fraud. And to give you some background on the mining business, the other 2 companies I got involved in, one was Nevson, which is still a company in existence today, doing quite well, thank you. But I did private placements in that at roughly $1 again with warrants. And at that time, it went up because there was a broker in Chicago, a guy I knew well. He's dead now. But he single-handedly took that stock from $1 to $20 just because he had a psychotic break, quite frankly. And he talked all of his customers. He had a big book into buying it. He personally drove it to $20. That was another big hit for me. And then the last one was Diamond Fields, which was an accident. It was supposed to be involved in diamond mining off the coast of Namibia. And that's why I bought it. I owned a lot of it. And it turned out that the diamonds off of Namibia never panned out, never profitable. But they made the biggest nickel discovery, one of the biggest in history. And that stock went to over $200. So I don't know how I got off telling these tales.
I love it.
Yeah, but that's all true. And as cheap as the mining stock market is right now, it's entirely possible that we're going to see things like that happen again. Now, you got to remember, most of these mining exploration stocks are crap. They're garbage. You shouldn't own them. But some of them that are real, they're going to hit home runs. I'm convinced in the next few years.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting industry, and that's why I thought of you when I watched the movie, and especially because it's based on the Bre-X scandal. And I think someone asked me the one time on it was either Facebook or somewhere, and I actually did a video about it because I kept saying about how there were a lot of potential scams out in the crypto space. And someone replied and asked, well, can you make money off of a scam? And I said, yes, the one word, timing, thinking of your stories, right? It's all about timing. You can make money off a scam and a Ponzi scheme. It just depends when you get in and when you get out.
Yeah, I don't recommend it, but it is possible. And of course, in my first novel, Speculator, that's what our hero, Charles Knight, finds. He makes a lot of money, and it turns out it was a scam, which he finds when he goes to West Africa to uncover it.
Yeah, absolutely. One last question for you, Doug. One of my favorite, I would say, videos on YouTube, and if any one of you are listening, look it up. It's Doug Casey on the Phil Donahue Show. It was quite a. I mean, it's one of my favorite things to watch. You handled that so well, and that was when talk shows were a little bit different than what it is now. Any comments on that experience and what talk shows have turned into?
Well, it is interesting. Back in those days, Phil Donahue was an intellectual, and he had the the biggest talk show in the country at that time. And it was, in relative terms, he was as big as Oprah was just after that. And it was legitimate because he liked to ask intelligent questions. And I had an hour by myself, and it was the day before the national elections in 1980 when Reagan was running against, who was it? Carter he was running against? I don't even remember. It must have been Carter. And I've got to say, it's on YouTube. And I think it was an excellent performance where I was telling the audience, telling the whole country, frankly, the reasons why I wasn't voting the next day. Because Donahue said, well, you must be voting for Reagan. And I told him, I got into telling him the 5 reasons why I wasn't voting at all. But I only got as far as the 4th out of the 5th reason before the audience started booing me. Good thing I didn't get to the 5th reason, because the 5th reason is your vote doesn't count. You know,
it wouldn't have been popular.
They would have tried to lynch me if they'd heard me say that the day before the elections. But of course, I don't believe in the government as an entity, quite frankly. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And these days, I mean, that's one of the things that's really disappointing, because this was, you know, these talk shows were highly entertaining. Even the late night shows, they've turned into something completely not what it was intended, right? Doesn't really provide any comic relief so much anymore.
Well, I don't watch them anymore. In fact, I try not to watch the news. It just clutters your mind up with misinformation and basically ridiculous opinions. So, and one of the nice things about being here in Argentina is that I'm not distracted with American television. I could watch all I wanted, but I don't bother. It's like a vacation for my mind, not having to listen to the talking heads.
Yep. Absolutely. One of the best things that I did in my life years ago is to cut all of that out. Doug, this was a fantastic experience again to connect with you. Really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your journey and providing so much value for my listeners.
Well, we'll do it again sometime, MC, and perhaps my novel Assassin will be finished and out by the next time we do it. I hope so.
Looking forward to it.
Are you having a hard time finding great investment properties? Unfortunately, the best deals are rarely found locally. Successful investing begins with the right properties in the right markets. Norada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best deals across the United States. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly cash flow. Learn how to find the best deals by downloading your free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Passive Real Estate Investing at noradarealestate.com. That's NORADA realestate.com.
Thank you for joining me again on the Cashflow Ninja. Thank you for all your support. You rock. If you like what you hear and appreciate what we're trying to build here at the Cashflow Ninja, please subscribe, rate, and review our show on iTunes and share our show with family, friends, and your network. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can sign up for our newsletter at cashflowninja.com or text Cashflow Ninja to 44222. I'm also posting daily videos on Facebook and YouTube and will live stream weekly starting May 2018. To make sure you don't miss any of the live streams, please like and subscribe to my Facebook and YouTube platforms. I'm also dropping content on Instagram daily. Be sure to follow us on Instagram to get in on the action. I want to thank you for spending your most precious resource with me today, your time. That's our show for today. Until next time, live a life of passion and purpose on your terms. This presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. The information being presented and considered does not consider your particular financial objectives or situation, and it does not make personalized recommendations. This material is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified tax and legal advisor or other qualified professionals, and you should not use the information in place of a customized consultation with a licensed professional regarding your specific personal financial objectives, situation, and needs. We believe the information provided is reliable, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, timeliness, or completeness.